Hi, greetings, ladies and gentlemen, from wherever you're watching us. Thank you for joining this special podcast brought to you by Akina Mama wa Africa. We're shooting from the beautiful Sankara Library in Bugolobi in Kampala. We're celebrating the International Women's Day under the theme, Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress. Uganda is facing a financial burden. Apparently, according to the Ministry of Finance, Uganda has a burden or a debt, a public debt of $23.7 billion. I beg your pardon. The burden is $23.7 billion, yes. This contributes 50.2% of the country's GDP. That speaks a lot. And beyond these numbers are women struggling financially and with social burdens. There are women that are facing social injustices, financial injustices, political injustices, among other forms of injustices. I have a panel of 6 women leaders and feminists. We're going to discuss broadly the financial aspect of this topic. Thank you for joining me. We're going to have personal introductions, and I'll begin from my left, and then we'll move the microphone.
Hello, everyone. I am so happy to be here today as we commemorate the International Women's Day. My name is Babile Patience Gloria. I have a hearing impairment and identify as hard of hearing. I am a youth panel representative with the MECWE program, actively advocating for the sexual and reproductive health and rights for persons with disabilities. I'm also a member of the Regional Council of Youth with Disabilities, which is under the MECWE program. I am an active advocate for disability inclusion and sexual reproductive health and rights.
Hello, everyone. My name is Buki Williams. I work for Akina Mama wa Africa as the SRHR program lead, which is sexual and reproductive health and rights. I'm a Pan-African feminist, and I am excited for us to be having this conversation today.
Hello, everyone. I'm Flavia Chomkama, Executive Director, Action Group for Health, Human Rights, and HIV, AGA. I'm glad to be here to talk investing in women, accelerating progress. We've been discussing financing for feminist agenda, particularly in health, and we look forward to sharing our piece of thoughts and minds on this day. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Loretta Owino Okeng. I work with Voluntary Service Overseas, that is VSO in Uganda. I head the Sexual and Reproductive Health Rights Program. I'm the Program Implementation Manager for the MECWE program. I consider myself a feminist. I'm a human rights activist, very passionate about reproductive health and gender-based violence. Thank you for having me here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Stella Nansamba. I'm a feminist, an economist, and I do work at Akina Mama Africa in the Women Political Leadership Program. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. You've heard from the panelists. It's a great panel to have. It's a pleasure to be your moderator. I see a lot of expertise from this side. Well, to go direct into the discussion, Uganda apparently is running on a budget of 48 trillion Uganda shillings. There are so many inequalities women and girls are facing. And my first panelist, Flavia, does this budget meet the needs of women and girls, the current budget? And how do we ensure that the future budgets meet the needs of women and girls going forward?
Thank you, Carlton, for the question about whether the budget meets the current needs of women and girls in this country. First of all, I want to thank the government for the progress we have gone so far. We have always been saying that women's issues should be budget issues because we are the fountain of the budget. 70% of us, women and girls, are in agriculture sector, and therefore we expect the budget to the agriculture sector to be as high as that. Women and girls are found in the caring sector, and we expect that much of the budget should go to primary health care, but also go to education, go go to gender, go to health. Unfortunately, over the years, as governments, we committed to allocate 15% to health, and Uganda has not even gone 10% of the budget. The highest we have gone has been about 8.9, about 4 years ago, and we feel we still have a big gap. I'm referring to the Abuja Declaration of 1995, where governments committed to allocate 15% of the gross domestic product to health. But we are consistently told that there's a lot of needs and responsibilities government is taking care of, and therefore allocating 15% to health has not been possible. And we have always been reminded that we need security. And for Uganda, the biggest component as for last year, 2023-24, is about 6% of the entire budget. And human capital development, where women fall and much of where our needs fall, is 7. And human capital development has got 3 sub-programs. We have got WASH, we have got education, we have got health. And so you realize that with the increasing population, this allocation is too minimal to meet the needs and the needs of women especially. I want to refer to the current crisis. We are having increasing violations. The last report from police for last year indicates that 71% of all violations were against women and girls. And we also realized that in the last year, HIV infection, 15,000 of the 53 new infections were among adolescents and young women. But we do realize that the budget allocated to areas that determine security, peace in homes, peace in communities is very limited. We have challenges meeting the basic needs because of the crisis of COVID. We have challenges of high dropout of girls, and we are still struggling with skilling the young women and girls. And when you look at the current budget, only 0.1% has been allocated to mindset change. And we know that norms, the cultural beliefs, they have a lot to play in light of the abuses that are happening. And we do know that we are as good a budget as our religious and cultural practices. So because much of what we do, our budget is so patriarchal. If you look at the feminine departments, they receive less. Look at Ministry of Gender, which is responsible for people and how they relate, and those concerned that are at community level, it has the lowest budget. And so we are thinking that as feminists, we need to continuously discuss, not talking about improving policy, improving or bettering systems, but the systems that we see are looking mainly at entrenching the status quo. But we are saying we want money put at health, money put into education, money put into community health, public primary health care, where women and girls are found, where the basic education, the basic tenets of life, of livelihood matter. And we realize that in agriculture, agriculture which hosts a big proportion of the women, has less than 6% allocated to it of the budget. So we feel that in order to accelerate progress in any country, we need to invest in women, because women we nurture the children, we provide the basics in terms of production in agriculture, we teach the children what they should do, how they should be, and we need to see a lot more monies allocated to women and girls. My call to action would be that as we think about financing for health, we think more about the critical departments and programs that allow women to progress, investing more in health, invest more in education, invest more in primary health care, because we are more empowered and can be more propelled if we have more investments in this department. The human capital development is our call, and once we have a lot of investment in primary health care, we are sure that the violations that happen will reduce, and shall see more women and girls progressing in education, taking leadership position, and also accessing the resources from the opportunities that government brings around, like parish development model. As for now, we still have a lot, there's a lot that is to be desired in light of investments accruing to women and girls and the programs that contribute to our livelihoods and progression. I thank you.
My next panelist is Loretta. Loretta, you're a feminist. You're an advocate of sexual reproductive health rights. You've heard how much goes to the PHC, under which several SRHR programs are supposed to be implemented. What are the major SRHR issues that affect women and girls that need major financing and investment from government? Government has done its part in regards to salary enhancements, but you find these problems, the ones you're explaining, they still exist. So how do we bring them on board to understand how vulnerable women and girls are?
Thank you for the question. I think it's the onus is on us as a community, because it's us who are supposed to access the services. And we saw it again, referring to the scorecard. The community, the young girls, were part of the process in holding the duty bearers or the service providers accountable. Sit at a round table and create a process of, this is the course that we're going to take. These are the issues that we have as young people. These are the issues as we have as adolescents in access to reproductive health services, and would like you to listen. Now the health workers also sit down and say, well, we understand you're saying this is an issue. However, this is not the case. Now the interface meeting and interaction between the two at community level lets them sit and talk and listen to each other, not as adult child, but people, community members who have issues to raise. And with this, we saw some positives coming out of it. We saw acknowledgement by the health workers saying, okay, fine, we agree that fine, sometimes the facilities might be unclean. We agree that yes, some health workers are not good or are not, just have a bad attitude and are rude. And by doing so, then if there's such a case, a committee was created in the various communities where the young people are part of a committee with the health workers. It's called the Joint Monitoring Committee in the various health centers. Their role is to meet frequently, to discuss and check. These are the issues that we said. We said there are no drugs. They talked about allocation of funds being low. That is at a higher level, though. We had of a facility having 8 million only per quarter. So that's at a bit of a higher level. However, they discuss on the issues that they can solve. The cleanliness of the facilities, the attitude of the health workers, the bribing system of reporting, going to the in charge, etc. And now that system is followed up of, is there any accountability happening? Has the youth complained about something, and as the service providers, did we hear that out? And if we didn't, what can we do to make it better? So at least there's a relationship that has been created for things to actually move. And the acknowledgement from the part of the service providers is a plus. It's them accepting and saying, yes, there's an issue and we're willing to address.
Yeah, thank you, Loretta. Coming to Gloria, one time I got an incident where people living with disabilities raised a concern. There is a lady who went to Kawempe Hospital to seek for a reproductive health service. And the midwife that attended to her asked what she wants the service for. She did not believe that this is a normal human being like her who has a right to seek for such a health service. And this, to me, explains the wide, the bigger problem of how much women and girls living with disabilities are excluded from some of these health services. What would you want government to consider or to prioritize on in regards to enabling women and girls living with disabilities to access health services like other people? Because we believe they face unique challenges. How do we address them?
From my own experience as a youth panel representative and a member of the Regional Council with Disabilities, I had the opportunity to have an engagement with fellow women with disabilities who have challenges accessing sexual reproductive health and rights information and services. This has been through focused group discussions and workshops organized by the youth panel. So I realized that most of these challenges are mainly accessibility, and it comes to communication challenges, inaccessible health centers, and maybe attitude of the healthcare workers. And then some of the health centers do not have persons with disabilities friendly corners. So this affects us in many ways when it comes to accessing sexual reproductive health and rights information and services.
So, Gloria, what should the government prioritize in the budget system, in the budgeting process, to ensure that women and girls living with disabilities access proper health services like other people?
From my own recommendation when it comes to what the government can do to help women with disability easily access sexual reproductive health and rights information and services, I have a few points to put across because I realize some of the points are cross-cutting. So I'll quote mainly from the upcoming population census. Maybe the government can put aside funds to have a more clear and detailed census for specifically persons with disabilities. The idea is to give a chance to persons with disabilities, women and their caregivers to express themselves freely and tell the government and all policymakers what exactly they need. This will help the government understand their specific needs and how best to help them access this information and services, where to find them, and how best to bring these services closer to them. So in this way, if the government understands what they need to do for persons and women with disabilities, maybe they'll make health centers accessible in a way that they can provide interpreters at health centers, build ramps at hospital centers, and maybe use communication languages that is easy to understand for persons with disabilities, like they can put signage to clearly point where the specific hospital departments are to enable persons with disabilities access those departments with ease. Yes, and also I noted that from the parliament, please forgive my articulation, from the Parliament Watch, that is an online outlet that talks about the Parliament news and affairs that is taking place. It was noted that we don't have enough special needs schools for children in the country. Maybe the government can set aside some funds to ensure that we have at least one special needs school per district. This will help young girls to stay in schools, and if young girls are in schools, we shall limit maybe the outcomes of them being idle, for example, unwanted pregnancies and forced marriages. So the idea is to have at least one special needs school per district.
Yes, thank you. You're still watching the panel discussion on ahead of the Women's Day on Inspire Inclusion. I have a panel of 6 experts in the financial sector, SRHR sector, and feminists and women living with disabilities. My name is Carlton Scovia Nakamia, your moderator. Let me go to Stella. Stella, you have a financial background. Gloria talked about a census, which is fundamental for planning and resource allocation. You work with women leaders in the political aspect, and also feminists to advance the feminist agenda and the gender responsive governance. So how do we advance gender transformative financing and governance that supports the aspiration of women and girls?
Thank you so much, Carlton. I would like to start by saying advancing gender transformative financing and governance requires a comprehensive approach that addresses structural inequalities and promotes systematic change. Gender responsive governance in itself calls for government structures, processes, and policies to be designed and implemented in a way that takes into account the specific needs, interests, and different experiences of both women and men. Oftentimes, we do find that when we call for engagements on gender-responsive governance, men are going to shun them under the pretext that it is a space meant for only women, which is not the case. Gender-responsive governance aims to promote gender equality, empower women, and address gender-based disparities in decision-making, resource allocation, and service delivery. The speakers before me highlighted the issues around financing in the health sector, in what presents as unpaid care work. It is important then for us to advance gender-responsive financing and governance through gender-responsive budgeting itself, whereby we implement gender-responsive budgeting processes that analyze how government expenditures impact men and women differently. There is also a need for us to integrate gender considerations into financial policies and regulations to ensure that financial inclusion and access to resources is paramount. The other point would be around women's participation in decision-making at all levels of governance. Improve and strengthen their capacities around issues that are going to promote the needs and address the structural inequalities that already exist in a patriarchal world that we currently live in, so that they promote the aspirations of women and girls. When we conduct trainings around, say, gender-responsive budgeting, we are looking at improving and strengthening, amplifying the voices of women on the in all, at all levels of governance. Really, it's not about the local or the national. It's it cuts across all the divides, and it is important then to provide them with the necessary information so that when they do actually move on to address issues that pertain the well-being of women and girls, that behavior is going to be emulated by men who actually see the point in what the women on the floor of parliament perhaps are presenting. And then in that way, we are pushing for a transformative governance across the board that will cater to the aspiration of women and girls.
Okay, Buki, you've heard from the other panelists that health financing is not a priority in our budget. If you have only 6% of the country's budget go to the health sector, then that speaks a lot on the existing gaps. From your experience, what are the existing gaps that need to be addressed to ensure that the well-being of women and girls is a priority?
Thanks, Carlton. And I think building on what the other panelists have spoken to, I think I'm going to start with just the understanding of how important women and girls in all their diversities are to our countries and to our economies as well. And I know when we talk about gender, people often think in the binary, and because of various criminalization that has happened, we often live out a lot of communities in that, right? So we are talking specifically about women and girls in all their diversities, gender not conforming persons as well, trans people as well, and I think it's quite important, some who live with disability and some who don't. But just really, as someone has already mentioned, taking an intersectional lens to understand that we do live in a society that's very diverse. And I think, one, it's quite important to realize that, because I think one of the reasons why our financial investment is not going far is because that we're willing to leave some people out of our processes. We strongly believe that some people should be marginalized, and at their expense, we're building economies, we're building systems, we're building processes that is reliant on marginalization, that's reliant on exploitation. And I think it's quite important, especially as we celebrate International Women's Day, and looking at the history of it, right? I think we've led with a depoliticized understanding of International Women's Day. And I'm sure, those who started this day are probably wondering what happened from its socialist beginnings for us to come and start only maybe talking at a level of only inclusion, or we're at a point in which we don't understand how much women and girls contribute to an economy. I think it's quite important that when feminist economists talk, we should listen. And one of the things that they've been able to make a strong case for, and that we are at a space where we're talking about it, and I think it's something Faith is also going to mention, is the fact that women subsidize our economies. Like our capitalist economies are not going to function if women and girls were not doing the care work, right? If they were not doing it in many ways for free. And COVID really brought that out, because like, who was the one doing the caregiving in terms of still providing food, still providing access to water, still educating children, still providing those basic resources? If it wasn't for them, and if it wasn't for them now, our entire system would collapse. If we didn't have community health workers, many of them who are not paid, who are going from community to community, we would not be able to talk about the immunization numbers that we have right now, because they are the one doing that level of care work because they care about their communities, and they are willing to do that just for recognition. But they are not being given money, and we know how expensive it is to do that kind of level of work. And I think it's so critical. And if it wasn't for the second shift of women to be able to ensure that our communities are sustained, that our communities are whole, we wouldn't even have anything to rely on. So for me, I think that's one of the biggest gaps, is really recognizing the role of women and girls, right? Because if you look at it, right, when we were looking like at various education surveys, we do realize that girls do more care work than their counterparts, right? And so it already starts from a very young age in particular. So the fact that there's that, I think also the fact that we are still talking about the fact that in order for our government to be able to run, they run in a global system that makes it difficult for us to rely on domestic resources, right? For us to use domestic resources to be able to address our needs. And so a lot of our countries are reliant on debt, right, to be able to ensure that our economy functions. And in order to be able to pay that debt, to service that debt, they put in measures, right, that are required of them. And a lot of those measures attack public services, right? Because when they're going to put austerity, is going to be a hold on hiring health workers, or hiring teachers, or hiring civil servants, right? Because if we're not relying on the economy, the government is usually also the other hirer of labor that we have in our countries, right? And so when you put a hold on that, when you ensure that people don't get raises, when you ensure that people are not provided the resources to be able to do their job, it's going to have an impact on our systems and our society. Or the fact that it is going to put a hold on being able to invest in the social services that we need. And then when we hear from that, a lot of people either have to pay from their pockets. We see the need for out-of-pocket financing across the continent. I think in Uganda, we see 30 to 40%. In some countries where I'm from, like Nigeria, you're seeing 70% out-of-pocket costs to be able to access health services. A lot of people are having to take their kids to private schools, which we don't even know the quality that is being provided in those schools, to be able to ensure access to education, right? In terms of doing that. Or the fact that if you ever are in the hospital, you need somebody from your family to come stay with you, to make sure you have food, to make sure you're bathing, to make sure you get, the medicines that you need, which you have to pay for out of pocket. Exactly, which then they now have to focus on this. So like really understanding the fact that, these are public goods that the government is supposed to provide. The same way government is supposed to provide security, there's some basic things that governments are supposed to provide, and health and education fall under that. But now we're having a new conversation in which people feel comfortable saying that, well, the government does not have enough, as if the government is a private business. right? Not an actual government, not an actual state, because there's no way the private sector could exist without the support of the state. Because the state makes it possible and creates the enabling environment for the private sector to exist. We can have conversations about what that looks like. But for me, what has been interesting to find, and I'm really grateful for feminists who really provided the analysis for us to understand this, is the fact that this whole idea of private sector financing or bringing the private sector in delivering public goods because you believe that it would be more efficient, because you believe that it would be more effective, or that you believe that you're going to save money. That has not been proven true. And I think COVID has also shown that that's not been proven true. I think the issue of oxygen in Uganda really highlighted how it's not possible that we're willing to discard people because they didn't have enough money, right, to buy something that was necessary for them to survive. Or the issue that was made about a young woman having to take a bike all the way to be able to get services and what that means for her life now and her child. But the thing about it is, like, health is supposed to be free. We're bringing this private sector mentality in providing public goods and talking about privatization, talking about private financing, talking about loans and things like that. That really is not going to improve the quality of it at all, right? And we're going to further marginalize and entrench people in poverty. Because that is what it looks like, right? When people cannot meet their basic needs. That's what we're talking about multidimensional poverty, is that when people cannot, they don't even have money, but neither can they get basic services, right? That's a different level of poverty that we are talking about. And I think it's quite important for us to pay attention to that. And that the fact that our governments should see the domestic resources that they are gathering, that they are able to generate in revenue, wherever they're generating those revenues for, either by taxing, which we do believe they need to tax more of the wealthy people, and they need to ensure we're getting our taxes from those who come and extract from our communities, either, in terms of in terms of just the products that are being produced in Uganda and then taken out. So we're seeing this production happening, but the communities where those production is happening not benefiting from it. And this is very true for so many African countries. And I think until we actually start to benefit from that, and the government focuses on getting that money, or even what is being considered like the illicit financial flows that are leaving our countries, when we get back that money, I really do believe we should go into investing in public goods. It needs to go in investing in people. And I'm not buying into this idea of that investing in people is going to be better for our countries in terms of productions, in terms of, GDP and things like that. But I really believe investing in people because that's who we are, right? Investing in people because we have to be rich in people, right? And we do have to create a world in which I feel like, when you're talking to a lot of young people right now, a lot of them just feel so overwhelmed. You get an education, but you can't, get employment. You don't feel like you can use your skills in ways that are benefiting yourself and your communities. So for me, it's really, we need to go back to the public first approach. Always and always and always. So for me, when we're talking about the investments, or we're talking what we need to do, our governments need to start putting people first. Not money first, not the international financial institutions, not them first because they're bringing in the money, but really people should really be at the center. And when we say people, that means all people, not some, not those who we think fit into the normative way of defining people, but for all, truly for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that insightful discussion. Before I bring this to conclusion, allow me have parting shots from each of my panelists.
Thank you so much, Carlton. I would say my concluding remarks would be that we need to acknowledge that it starts from the micro level, community engagement, because the mostly affected people are in the community, especially in Uganda. Being realistic, it's at subnational level where you see lots of people being affected by the lack of resources coming from above. And not just people, when I talk about, I'm saying in the rural communities, in the slum communities, in communities where people might be in the city, but they're actually in that population that do not have. I think we need to put them at the forefront of our planning and consider them in the engagements or in the space where the decisions are being made, where the decisions are being made. Let them be in the space, let them contribute to what their needs are, and not to let others decide what their needs are. So if we could find a way and devise a way of not just holding the duty bearers accountable in the process, but involve the citizens in the planning processes of their health needs, then I think we'll be able to achieve quality access to or available as well commodities that are related to sexual and reproductive health.
Thank you very much, Carlton. My parting shot is that as women, gender, human rights, and health financing advocates, we'll continue to ask that an extra penny is put those areas that touch the woman and the girl, because by far they are the most afflicted, the most marginalized, the most left out in social services, in health, education, and gender and programming. And so we believe that in order to cut the high out-of-pocket expenditure that is driving women and girls more into poverty and vulnerability, we must continue to put pressure on our governments to invest more in those areas that hurt a woman and a girl.
My concluding remarks will be a call for us all. And when I say us all, that is to include multi stakeholders and different CSOs to focus on intersectional, intergenerational, as well as multi-stakeholder partnerships and issue-based coalitions, and civil society, basically, to develop alternatives for us to push and uphold democracy and safeguard gender equality and women and girls' rights.
Thank you so much. My closing remark is on reasonable accommodation. With the necessary and specific reasonable accommodation for us as persons with disabilities, we shall embrace inclusion. So when I was young, I used to think speaking is for other people. I thought I, as a person with a disability, I have to give my point to someone else to present it for me or speak for me. But I'm so grateful for the micro program for giving me the opportunity, empowering me to speak up for myself and speak for people out there who cannot voice for themselves. I am so grateful for this opportunity to actively advocate for sexual and reproductive health and rights for women and young girls. I also call upon the government to support programs that empower and support advocates who have hearing impairment, advocates who are persons with disabilities who can actively advocate for sexual reproductive health and rights, empower them, and maybe they participate in research as researchers and not only as respondents. Thank you so much, because this is our story and you can tell it best. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Carlton, and thanks to everyone for this very interesting conversation. So I would say that for me, as I think and I reflect on the conversation, even on the past year, since last year for International Women's Day, I think one of the things that has come out very clearly to me, and because we also celebrated 20 years of the Maputo Protocol, which is one of the most progressive regional legal frameworks that enshrines the rights of women and girls and really goes in depth into looking at the fact that women don't live single issue lives. There's still things that are left out, but like it really identifies in a legal framework that women don't live single issue lives. So for me, my biggest call really is one for us to realize that there has been a co-optation of the women's rights movement. And in many ways, to be able to roll back the gains that we've made. I'm hearing recently from Gambia, where they're trying to repeal the FGM law. I'm seeing the fact that we thought we had made progress on gender-based violence, and even if we had, we're still seeing the numbers that are coming out, and the lack of investments by our government, like you said, in mindset change in Uganda, for example. Or we saw the march and solidarity to the Kenyan feminists, right? Who really were marching and trying to get attention to the fact that women are being killed every day, and different women are being killed every day, and the need for us to address that, right? Or even solidarity to the women in Congo who are holding the community together and fighting for peace. Same in Cameroon, same in Sudan, and always, of course, same to those in Gaza as well. So I think for me, my call to action is that we need to start pushing and rejecting, borrowing from the climate justice movement, false solutions. That is really my call. Is that we need to start rejecting these false solutions of privatization, false solutions of debt swaps, of climate swaps, false solutions of this lean in and, oh, just give women microfinance, or just empower a woman, empower a child. Like, we just need to reject all of these false solutions and really embrace this liberation agenda that has been defined by African feminists and Pan-Africanists, of really the need for our own agency, our own autonomy of our bodies, of our economies, of our communities, and really to not see ourselves as as individuals, and to really truly understand that nobody's free until all of us are free. So they might all sound like mantras at this point, but they are really true, and we really do need to embrace the solidarity journey. We do need to embrace the fact that these false solutions are further dividing us rather than bringing us together. And so that is my part in short, is that, like, right now, as we think of International Women's Day, that really significantly think of the ways in which we've all been we've all been told these stories that, oh, the private sector is going to come and save us, so, oh, we just need to do this one thing and it will change everything. But really, that the work is ahead of us, but that we really need to start pushing for these alternatives, some of which have been highlighted in this room, and that is what is going to get us free. So thank you.
Thank you, ladies, for being such a wonderful panel. It's a pleasure to moderate and also to listen to each one of you. I hope the rest of us who are watching will enjoy this. From me and the team at Akina Mama of Africa, we wish you a good and an amazing International Women's Day. Invest in women, accelerate progress. In whatever you do, you're a women leader, you're a political leader, you're a social or health service provider. Invest in women, accelerate progress. My name is Carlton Scovia Nakamia. Have a wonderful day.